Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Sachdev, and some of fintech's hardest hitting marketers and leaders.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the FML podcast. Today we're joined by Tom McGillycuddy, co-founder at CIRCA5000. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Great stuff. Well, look, let's just jump straight into it. For everyone who's listening today who doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Cool. How far back should I go? Born and raised, or
wherever you think has an influence on your life? Let's start with that.
I think it all 100% has. So I was born and raised in Wigan, in Greater Manchester, in the northwest of England. First person in my family to go to university. First person in my family to leave Wigan, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I never had any intention of leaving, but I was convinced to do so by my dad, just for education, really, and stuff like that. So after university, I kind of was grappling with what to do. I had no real passion for finance or passion for any particular industry, if I'm totally honest. I wanted to get on a career kind of ladder that I thought had potential, really, and I could work my way up in any organization. That was my kind of criteria when I was 21. I originally started working at Barclays just outside in Manchester and doing some kind of relationship support function. And then I was like, I may as well apply for the graduate scheme whilst I'm here. So I applied for one of the graduate schemes, was fortunate enough to get on that. And then when I arrived at Barclays and I met all my peer group on the graduate scheme, I realized that I was the idiot in the room, basically. And I felt like I'd slipped through the net getting through onto that graduate scheme. I didn't feel like I deserved it or belonged there. I kind of learned, over the next year or so that was just all in my own head. And that was a perception thing. Everybody had these amazing educations, Harvard, Yale, people from Singapore and China who'd done so much by the age of 21. And I'd basically been to school, stacked shelves and washed pots. And then I was here after my degree. But what I realized pretty quick was I felt like I needed to work much harder than them to overcompensate for my perceived lack of kind of skills. That kind of stood me in good stead though, because I just started working harder and putting more hours in than almost anybody that was on that grad scheme. And I realized over time that the kind of shiny degree certificate and the background didn't really mean anything once you were in the door. And in fact, the people at Barclays liked the fact that, someone would come in, learn, work hard, try and work their way up. So my first day of that graduate scheme is where I met Matt, who's the co-founder of CIRCA5000. We actually lived together for the first 8 weeks of the graduate training program in Canary Wharf. He's from Liverpool. So we grew up, half an hour away from each other and, became like close friends pretty quickly. Once I'd gotten over that initial, the industry's not for me and I'm an outsider kind of thing, we both started to realize that it seemed like the industry was designed to confuse people. So we were working in the investment industry and we were learning all the jargon and learning all the ways that they do things. And it became pretty evident to both of us that all of our family and friends who we'd grown up with have been excluded from this industry for no good reason, really. There's a perception that you need money, the perception that you need some kind of experience, or you need to pay an advisor. And it's just all not true. And it's felt to me designed to exclude and designed to keep people from building wealth for themselves. So we had that conversation about 6 weeks after we met each other, 6 weeks into Barclays. We didn't discuss doing anything with that conversation, but it was evident to both of us right from the beginning that was a problem with the industry. About a year in, I went to work in Hong Kong with Barclays and Matt went to New York. When I came back from Hong Kong, I started to have this crisis of mission. When I first joined Barclays, I felt like I'd won the lottery in every sense, both from a monetary sense, because I was very money oriented at that time, and from a career sense. I felt like sky's the limit for me here, and I'm going to pursue that with everything I've got. And I loved the learning because in finance and investing, you learn loads of different disciplines. Yes, you learn investing, but you learn economics, you learn, sociology, psychology, all sorts of things at the same time. And I loved that because in my mind, it was like teaching me how the world works and operates. And I still love that. That's the thing I love the most about investing to this day. But it was missing kind of mission and purpose. I was very money orientated at the beginning. 2 years in, I realized that I actually wasn't. What I was orientated by was having some meaning to my work, some mission, something that I could get behind, something that could get me up in the morning beyond just the obvious. And my friend at the time, a good friend of mine who's a bodybuilder, he went vegan. This is like 2012-ish, something like that. And I was like, how the hell can you be a bodybuilder and be vegan? You know, how does that work? And he explained to me about the climate angle, about the ethical angle. And I was like, I'll give it a go. And that go turned into me being vegan for like 2.5 years from that conversation onwards. And what it started off in me was I wanted to do something for climate, but also people issues are very, very close to my heart as well. And I was like, I wonder if there's a way I could combine financial investing skills with this desire to do something like bigger than that for me. I couldn't see a way of doing that where I was. And I decided to join a US firm called Wellington Management. And they're a big US asset manager. They manage about $1 trillion of AUM. The clients are all pension funds and sovereign wealth funds. They're not a consumer business. They're an institutional business. And I joined there really as a stopgap to leave the industry altogether whilst I figured out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I'd become convinced that I was going to leave financial services because I couldn't find this like purpose to it. When I joined there, I met a guy very early on who was visiting from the San Francisco office. He was a guy called Eric Rice. Eric's now the head of impact investing at BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world. And he explained to me that he was working on this idea to launch what is called the Wellington Global Impact Fund. There's now a BlackRock Global Impact Fund. The idea was that you'd invest in companies around the world to beat the market in terms of returns, but only by investing in companies who were solving world problems through their business models. And it was born out of a piece of work they did there called Future Themes. And they analyzed water scarcity as an investable theme. And they realized that there was this huge, big structural trend. And companies that were solving the structural trend and using technology to scale the solutions stood the chance to earn outsized returns. But it also had this massive social and environmental underpinning. And Eric's background is US diplomat and developed market economist. So he's very impact orientated naturally as an individual. And he was basically like, how many other themes like this are there that we can invest in that are good for the world, but good for returns as well, like a win-win situation? And we found 10, and that's what we created the fund around, these 10 themes. So anything from banking access, internet access, to affordable housing, education, but educating certain types of people in certain countries. And we created this portfolio that we got off the ground. That became my day job over time. And by the time I left Wellington in 2018, there was 4 of us managing $2 billion of investments. We were working on the fund. I kind of researched everything from Tesla back in the day to 3D printers to wind companies operating in Spain, all over the map. And every single year that we did it, we beat the market, and we did it by investing in these companies that you could go and tell your parents why they're good for the world. And they'd kind of feel proud of what you're doing and, kind of smile and light up inside of how good a job they've done raising you, basically. And along that journey, Matt and I become like best friends. And Matt texted me, we still have the original text message in like 2016, 17. We both have been on the path where we're like, we know this is the future of the entire industry. And we know that because Matt stayed at Barclays the whole time, and our peer groups across the industry, this was the form of investing that kind of lit them up when they were speaking about it. All the younger people in the investment industry were kind of clamoring to work in it, and they wanted to do it with their own money, but there was no convenient way to do it with your own money yet. And that was the insight of, we think this is the future of the entire industry. We know our generation want to do it. Let's start working on that idea. Then the more we spoke with people outside of the industry about the idea that we're working on, we realized it was just like a generational shift in how people think about what they want to do with their money, the clothes they buy, the food they buy, and eventually their money, their investments. And if you could prove that it's this really exciting future theme investment, which is what the background that I came from, the portfolio that we created, then there's a strong returns argument and strong returns evidence, but you do it in this like feel good way. And that's the kind of the background and how we came to kind of, launching the company.
You obviously founded, at that time it was called Ticker, obviously now it's called CIRCA5000. Can you sort of like talk to me about development of the product? It's on a mobile app. It's open to obviously for retail investors to invest into. What were the initial thoughts in terms of how you decided to develop the product? Had you sort of decided that it was going to be a mobile app? Had that sort of occurred to you at that point?
Yeah, so it did. I mean, pretty soon after the initial conversations, we felt like it had to be a mobile app because of the demographic we were targeting. We didn't really flirt with the idea of doing like a desktop solution. We went straight to mobile app. Originally, we liked the idea, and this is still the core idea of like, thematic choice and thematic impact investing, because separate to the trend of people caring more about what they do from an impact sustainability point of view, there was the trend of thematic investing and the trend of kind of ETF investing as well. So the founding vision of the company was combining all those three things, and now they're kind of coming to a fore with the stuff that we're working on. But the founding vision of the company was basically scale the consumer product, make it thematic, make it ETF in the background from an implementation point of view. Whilst we scale the consumer product, use other people's ETFs as the underlying building blocks. But as we scale, those ETFs become our ETFs, and underlying, we become the fund provider as well as the platform provider. So someone this week called us like the Impact Vanguard, basically, because Vanguard, they're so profitable and big because they're the platform and they're the fund. Normally people are just one of either. But there's a real strong argument for us to be both, primarily because, first of all, we're trying to do something differently and change an industry, because the way the core industry operates is just not considering impact whatsoever. So we can't really go and use their funds if we're going to scale this business properly. And we can do a much better job at creating the impact funds than they can, because they don't really care. So the original core idea was that, and that was why. And now we're in the middle of developing our own ETFs to launch.
So tell me about your funds in that case then. What makes CIRCA5000's funds from, say, other impact investing funds or other ESG type funds? What's the fundamental difference? What's the secret sauce?
The fundamental difference is, so if someone says they're impact investing, then it means a specific thing. It means a very, very specific thing. And actually is like a proper definition of this, which I'll butcher in a second, but there is a proper recognized definition. But I think people confuse impact and ESG all the time. And it's like one of my biggest bugbears, because I'm anti-ESG, basically. I think it's useless. The reason why it's useless is because it's used as a tool for the old asset management industry to continue doing exactly what they've always been doing, but to say that they're sustainable. People think it means you're investing in companies that are good for the world, but it's not about the impact of a company. It's a measure of whether the company is a good corporate citizen. That's one way of thinking about it. That's why you see Coca-Cola and HSBC heavily in these ESG funds, because generally speaking, good governance, little social problems with their supply chains and things like that, and little environmental impact. So they score well, and they're big positions. That's why the big tech companies have big positions in the ESG funds, because they generally score well on those kind of things as a whole. But that's not what people think they're investing in when they select ESG funds. They think they're investing in Vestas Wind Systems. They think they're investing in Beyond Meat. They think they're investing in these companies that are actually producing something that's improving the world in that direction, but they're not. And that's the vital difference. So ESG in the industry is used as a bit of a cop-out to continue doing what they're doing. It's actually a risk mitigation framework for the asset management industry. What I mean by that is a company stock price who I'm investing in likely to be exposed to an environmental risk that would damage the stock price? For example, coal companies might not get in because there might be a carbon tax which would damage the stock price. That's a risk to the stock price. It's not about the impact of the company. It's about risk to the investment. Whereas impact investment is about identifying companies whose business models are aimed at solving world problems. That's the vital difference. So if you get a genuine impact fund, the ones that we use, the ones that we're creating, and you look at the top 10 holdings, they're a world away from the top 10 holdings of an ESG fund. They're entirely different. It's an entirely different framework and an entirely different language. You get these pure play companies, you get the stories, you get the narrative, you get the feel-good factor. Whereas a lot of these people that are offering ethical or ESG versions of a core offering, if you really look at the top 10 holdings, you know that they're not doing it properly. They're not doing it with that in mind.
Cool. First and foremost, thanks for clearing that up. And I think kind of brings me nicely on to sort of my next question, which really is, originally you were called Ticker. I'll be honest, I quite like that name. And then you've rebranded to CIRCA5000, which I equally like. What's the story behind that?
Did you know as Ticker? Did you follow us at that point? Yeah,
I did. Yes.
So, a couple of things. There's a few factors to it. One is, when we launched a couple of years ago, Ticker was a name that we chose, and it comes from stock market ticker symbol, but we dropped the E because trying to be cool, etc.
Fintech, right?
Everyone has to do it, right?
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, you did trading apps and short-term trading products were not kind of as what they are today. There's been a huge kind of rise in that. And that name is an industry insider kind of trading style name, because when you buy a signal line equity, you quote the ticker symbol when you're placing the trade. That's how they used to do it, or they still do it really on the trading apps. So it felt like not what we are as a product, because we're about long-term wealth creation, building a future that's good for yourself and for everybody else. That's what we are as a company. And we're about investing properly. We can go into kind of those things. At the same time, there's another consideration, which is a lot of sustainable, ethical businesses get their branding and tone of voice wrong. They come across too worthy or do-goody, and it's actually off-putting to most people. And we don't come at it from that angle. We don't come at it as like we're better than anybody or we're morally superior. We come at it from a building the future and investing in future themes angle that's good for the world. That's what we stand for, and that's what we do. So we wanted to wrap that all up in a piece of work that kind of depositioned us away from the short-term trading products and depositioned us away from the ethical do-goody brands, and created something that was like the Tesla for investing, effectively. Because Tesla is an impact company, but they're seen slightly differently in the sense that they've got the best product. It's the most aspirational. People buy it for the technology, they buy it for the experience, and it's electric. So it was that reframing. And so the visual identity, the tone of voice is much more about building the future, the futurism. And the name is a metaphor for building the year 5000. It's intentionally a metaphor. It's intentionally meant to make people think and to inspire long-termism. So now that long-termism and that futurism runs through everything from the names, the identity to the tone of voice, and it's all very, very clear. Whereas before, we weren't as intentional about it. And so it was time to get intentional.
How do you think that was received by your current clients and current customers and sort of your new customers? Do you think it's helped narrowing down your target audience or perhaps getting in front of your target audience?
I think it 100% has helped narrowing down and targeting our target audience 100%. I mean, in terms of how it went down initially, it's a big change, obviously. And it was worked on by, we worked with an agency, but there was a small group of us internally that worked on it. It causes a reaction when you present it to people. And we presented it to the team, and then we did in October last year, we did a presentation to our top 200 customers in London. It could have gone down either way, I think, because it's one of those names which I think is perfect for a brand and a visual identity, which is, first of all, it's unexpected. If you've come from the previous one, it is unexpected. But people love it, but everyone has an opinion of it. So there's love and there's probably something that dislike, but everyone has an opinion on it. Whereas before, I felt like people were just like, yeah, it's all right, which is not how you build a brand. We've tapped into something that I think our North Star customers love, which is how we will build a brand. And when we presented it to them in October, they stood up and started applauding. So I didn't expect that. I thought there might be a few tomatoes, thrown at us and stuff, but it went down well, and it's gone down well since. Of course, some people don't get it, but I think in time they will get it. And I think it's a case of scaling it, both from a brand awareness point of view and from a customer base point of view.
Yeah, I was going to say, brand communication sorts that problem out. That's not expected on day one. I think, to be fair, when I first sort of came across, CIRCA5000 when it was ticker, my view was, cool, they've got some cool funds on there. When are they bringing on share trading because of the name ticker? I kind of just expected that. And then I sort of sat around kind of waiting for it. And it didn't happen. And, life goes by and whatnot. And all of a sudden, CIRCA5000 came out. And I thought, all right, they've done something different here. I don't know whether I like it or not. And then as I found out more about the story, I was like, okay, I kind of get where you're coming from. And I think, it's solidified your position in terms of, or solidified your brand proposition. And that backs the product that you're actually putting in front of your customers. So
yeah, totally agree. It felt misaligned before. I felt like we were saying one thing, the branding and the name slightly another, and it didn't help, I don't think, in the end. But now I think it does.
And I suppose as part of that, in part of making that decision, obviously you've launched the original product. You've had your sort of initial funds, like you said, that you've created. You've acquired customers and whatnot. Were there any points where you kind of felt you had to sort of tweak the direction of the company, or in your case, did you feel like you were going down the right path in terms of the product and proposition that you were promoting? And have you changed direction at all from where you kind of originally were?
The overarching, have we changed? We haven't. So in terms of the founding DNA, the kind of investing that we do and where we ultimately see ourselves, that hasn't changed. In fact, I think the main change that we've learned, and I suppose learned in a way, not the hard way, but it has been a lesson, is to now stay ruthlessly true to the founding vision and the founding principles and what we ultimately see this product becoming. And I think along the way, you could say we've been guilty of occasionally getting distracted with things to bring out in the product, which weren't core to that. And I think now it's the most streamlined in terms of product strategy, vision of the company, where we'll be, what we're building, who we're building it for, and why. So we've not done any major changes from the beginning. I just think in the middle, we've flirted with perhaps, should we explore this? And I think some of the things we've done were right to have been explored, to rule in and rule out. But I think now we're more closely aligned to the founding vision than we've ever been, I think.
I think every company kind of naturally goes through that. You kind of get, there's always going to be distractions along the way. And then, you kind of got to sort of rein it back in and realize actually what your core is. And then in terms of sort of where, obviously where CIRCA5000 is now and kind of like looking into the future, what's on the horizon? What sort of products are you thinking of introducing? I know you've recently introduced personal pensions. It'd be great to learn a little bit more about that, other products and just generally in terms of perhaps other ETFs as well that you're looking to bring in.
So we've now got, I suppose, the main suite of account types that you could want, really, GIA, ISA, JISA, SIP. So we're kind of fully built out from that point of view. And in terms of the next big milestone on the horizon is our own branded ETFs. So that's what we're working hard on today. So key part of the vision, basically, is to replace and or bring out brand new themes within the app. So our customers can build their own theme using our ETFs, mix and match and create their own portfolios. That's a key step. And then after that, we'll bring out impact stocks. So not from a trading point of view, but from a core satellite point of view. Say if you built your theme, but you might be interested in taking a position in Oatly and somebody else on the side as a single line position to the core strategy. We will enable that. So we'll have a curated list of really high impact companies, global companies that our customers might want to add onto the side of their core themes. That'll come after the ETFs. The huge things for the ETFs is that the ETFs will be distributed European wide at the beginning, so they'll be able to be bought across Europe, and then we will shortly after that list them in the US as well, so they'll be able to be bought in the US. So the idea is that we have this powerful consumer proposition which we build up over time, but our funds power the kind of impact retail universe. So they're in Europe, they're in the US, and then they can be in parts of Asia and South America too. So those core 5 ETFs that we'll be launching later this year will form the basis of our app and basically other people's impact offering as well. And then we'll go direct to consumer. Probably some European countries first, but we're also exploring the US. We'll go into the US with our ETFs first, and then we'll look to do it from a consumer point of view.
What's the timeline horizon on that?
We'll have our ETFs out probably Q3, Q4 this year. When they're out and available in the app, they'll be immediately all across Europe for distribution. And then we are probably 3 months away from having them across the US for the funds. And then we'll explore where else we launch from a consumer perspective with the consumer app. So the funds can sit separate to the app, but they obviously come with it as well. So it's easier for us to launch the funds in different countries first, assess demand, and then go with the full consumer proposition, where you get the pre-built themes, you get the impact reporting, you get the user experience of the product. So you can have a more rounded kind of CIRCA5000 impact investing experience with the core app. So that's the kind of time frame that we're working on.
I asked very selfishly for my own SIP. So.
No, honestly, I've got my SIP now with CIRCA5000, obviously, but I can't wait for our own ETFs to come out. It's something we've been working on for 2 years. They're the kind of products that I personally want to use with all my money. So selfishly, I can't wait either.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Vanguard because I think Vanguard have kind of, like I said, done a similar thing. They've allowed people to create the flexibility to invest into their products and access to it, even if they're holding their SIP somewhere else or whatever it may be. And I think, you're I mean, strategically from a brand perspective, it's great. And then also from the fact that you're actually giving people access to your products as well, broadly as well, exactly. It's a win-win scenario.
Yeah, exactly right.
We've talked a lot about CIRCA5000, about the product. Kind of want to talk to you about your individual journey as a founder. And, I mean, you've been going, you said since 2016, 2017. So that's,
working on the idea, but the first version of the app went live 2019. So, yeah.
Still a good 3 or 4 years behind that.
Yeah.
And then you've kind of gone from from 2018 to now, you've gone from 2 to, 35 people.
Yeah.
So it's quite an expansion. Tell me about your personal journey as a founder. Like probably the bits I'd like to sort of focus on is the horrible bits. What were the hard bits that you had to overcome? What were the learnings from that? What were the hard lessons that you had?
Fundamentally, the good side of it is I think Matt and I are well suited to the environment. I think we work fast. We work at speed. We try and execute quick, and we're resilient people. I think that's, resilience is probably the number one characteristic, because you are going to get so many no's, so many rejections, so many things go wrong, that it's really going to test your resolve. And if you're not wedded to the idea and to the concept and to seeing it through, you'll stop, and that's the end. The big overarching lessons for me, one is a lot of the key things in this environment are about recruiting the best people and getting them working on a clear strategy. If everyone's being truly honest with themselves, finding like 18 players is hard, especially right at the beginning where you're two people with a pitch deck. It's hard. So I think a lot of the early lessons and a lot of the lessons now are people related. And I think what I would say to myself 2 years ago is trust your instinct more on people. And that works both ways, on hiring and on people that perhaps aren't cut out for the environment or can't scale beyond the stage that you're at. It's kind of for both of you, because it's going to get harder and harder and harder. Trusting your instinct more on people is key. The second, I would say, is around not getting distracted by VCs. I mean, in two senses. One is, when we first came into this, we had no idea of the dynamics of a venture capital fund. We had no idea that the first call didn't really mean anything, and it was people just doing the homework on you, and therefore I wasted a lot of my own time because I didn't know that was the dynamic. I thought there was genuine interest, and I thought I could go somewhere. And that's number one. Number two, when a VC kind of tries to get you into fundraising, it could be a waste of your time. If it's not on your schedule and you've not planned it, unless they turn up and they're going to give you the money tomorrow, then perhaps a waste of your time. The third major one is take all their advice with a pinch of salt. And especially when it's like product advice, I've found. When I said before that I feel like we've been distracted at sometimes and we've strayed from the core vision, it's all because of feedback we've had from junior VCs, really. That's one of the hard lessons that I've learned. So if you really have conviction on your vision, which we 100% always did, do not let anyone dissuade you from that. Oftentimes, and it's definitely true of us, we come from a certain type of industry, and we are domain experts in the thing that we're doing and how we see the thing developing. Now, when we pitch to people from within our industry that are senior, the CEOs of some of the biggest asset managers and or old trading companies, not the neo traders, but the older trading companies, and people who've set up investment funds who are kind of that makeup, they really get it and they love it because they can see how it can develop. So don't get distracted by people who do not know what you're doing. You know it generally better than anybody, or at least anybody who's in that industry. So stay true to it and don't get distracted. Those are the three things that I think are the biggest lessons for us.
Aside from the culture at CIRCA5000, building a community is always a challenge. Pre-pandemic, you used to run a number of extremely popular in-person events and developed a community both online and offline. How have you been managing that or continuing to do that sort of post-COVID? And I suppose more broadly, how has your acquisition strategy sort of changed sort of from launch, pre-COVID, post-COVID?
Most of our growth has always come from word of mouth and referrals. That's still true today. 60% of growth from word of mouth and referrals. In the early days, back when performance marketing wasn't dead, we did some performance marketing. Now it seems much tougher.
I don't know about that. That's what we do. But anyway.
It was great at the beginning for us, but I think we've just adapted what we do now as we've got bigger. And now we do everything from partnerships and affiliates to brand awareness marketing to content marketing. And that other 40% is a lot more diversified than it was, say, at the beginning 2 years ago. So I think that's how it's evolved. And I think that will continue to evolve in that kind of direction. As we go through the years and launch different countries, I think there's much more emphasis now on us building awareness and building brand than there was before. And I think now we're getting to the point where we can stomach it from a budget perspective, and it's the right investment to make. In terms of community, we used to, right up until just before the pandemic, we would do 2 events per month at our offices, 150 to 200 people in the room, which was like capacity, probably a bit more than what we should have been fitting in, to be honest. And we do one on investing principles, the core principles on which the app is built, about long-term investing, what proper investing is. People used to turn up with like notepads and pens to that event, and we'd invite our new customers who came on each month, and then we might bring a friend, and then they refer a friend, and it was quite good from an acquisition point of view, but it was mainly about it was brand and it was community building. Before we really knew that we were doing that, we were doing it because it seemed to make sense for us to do it, because we were getting even more then a lot of people who've never invested before, and they were just keen to know what it was about. And the second event was about impact investing, what it is, what it means, Does it sacrifice returns, etc.? And we just roll these events month over month. We obviously had an abrupt stop from March for like a few months. Matt and I would just every Friday morning turn on Zoom and start recording ourselves chatting for half an hour and just send it to the customers. Sometimes there was loose topics, sometimes there was not. And we've since done properly scripted, properly produced podcasts. But those ones where it was just Matt and me chatting about whatever we want to chat about that day were way better received in many ways, because it was just an organic conversation between two people. And there was no pre-planned questions. Yeah, there might have been. Generally, how it started was, the reason why we started it was because obviously the markets were choppy because you had the COVID drop of 25% or 20%. And people wanted to know what was going on. So we would just fill people in on what was going on in the markets that week. But then the markets calmed down. So we would just chat about, what was going on that week in the world or with impact investing or whatever. They were quite well received. But I think we have tried virtual events, and I don't think they're here to stay for us or really for anyone, if I'm totally honest. I think there's way less impact. You can build way less brand, way less community doing it. It's my opinion. We are looking forward to getting our in-person events back in force, because I think that's the real way to do it. And we look to reinvigorate that because we know the demand is there. And people who came to the old ones missed them and want them again. But now we have a whole new, tens of thousands of customers that I think can benefit from them. So I think they work as in-person events, and we'll be doing it across this year.
I was going to say, with your kind of rollout to Europe, is there going to be a CIRCA5000 roadshow across Europe?
In what sense? In just from a brand awareness perspective?
Yeah, even like those in-person events that you were talking about, the events like impact investing, etc.
I think that should be a key component part of launching in places. I think brand awareness strategy and event strategy. I think that's our local footprint in a lot of countries. I think that's how you kind of ignite the local conversation. And it doesn't seem like the most infinitely scalable thing, but I think once you're in the room and you see them, and then you can obviously use the content and distribute the content, I think it works quite well. So yeah, I definitely see that being a part of how we launch in countries.
Well, I was going to say as well, you got to kind of like seed the growth somehow as well, right? So it doesn't need to necessarily be scalable from day one. It's just got to sort of seed your entrance into a particular territory.
Yeah.
As we kind of sort of approach the end of the podcast, I've got a few questions. So we'll go to the quick fire round in a second, but just more broadly, what would be one thing you'd change if you could do it all over again?
My original answer, but I've kind of already said it, was about trusting my instinct with people more. But I don't want to repeat myself, but that would be my number one. The second one, and I think we do it exceptionally well now, it's not for everybody, but operating even faster. Speed, learn from mistakes, keep going. We used to have a poster in the office, and I think we still got it somewhere. This was before COVID, but we should put it back up, which is faster until the fear of speed overcomes the fear of death. That was it, basically. So
I like that.
Just keep going faster and do more. Along with the strategy, not just randomly doing stuff, but stay clear to the strategy and pursue it at speed, and don't get knocked by anything, basically. Get back up and keep going, because I think that's ultimately the difference. The early stages of a company, if you want to build a company faster than usual on scale, are about operating at speed with brilliant people. And I think those two things go hand in hand, to be honest.
I think that should be the name of the podcast as well, actually.
Yeah.
And then I suppose just to sort of like wrap up the sort of core part of the interview, what's the one thing that you're most proud of as a founder?
Even though I would say that the most difficult thing has been people, the thing that I'm most proud of is the people in the team. Some people that have been with us basically from the beginning now. Lauren, Rob, and Toby in the team have been, the first three in the team, really, with some others, and they're still here, and they're brilliant, and they've helped us create a great culture. And when I look around the room now, and when we're together as a team, or look on Zoom calls, we've got some absolutely brilliant people working for us. It's a privilege to be working with them. It's how I feel. So I'm really proud of. I'm proud of that, not for myself, but I'm just proud of the team together.
Brilliant. Let's kind of jump into. We've got our quick fire questions, which today hasn't been done quickly.
I'll try and be quick with them, but I might ramble, so I'll go for it.
Don't worry about it. Everybody does. It's fine. What song do you have on repeat right now?
Well, according to Spotify, I'm in the top 0.1% of Kanye West listeners each year. So I'm a huge Kanye West fan. I've just finished watching the Genius documentary.
Yeah.
My favourite Kanye moment was in season 3, and it's when he's playing Father Stretch My Hands at the Life of Pablo listening party, and that's on repeat. It's always on repeat for me.
I like that. To be fair, I watched the first 2 episodes and they were really, really good. I was very much early Kanye was for me like College Dropout. That was the Kanye I liked.
I love everything, unlike some people, but I can see why people go off him. But I love it all.
He has his moments. What fintech app other than CIRCA5000 do you use the most?
I'm fully banked by Starling, so I am a Starling fully banked customer. So it would be that one, I guess, because it's my I use it for my banking, my savings. So I would say it's that.
To be fair, our business account was with Starling as well, so I'd agree.
We have a business account with them as well, I think so.
They are really, really good.
It's just consistently very good, no fuss, so it's good.
And if anyone from Starling is listening, can we sort out a bulk payment feature, please? Because I'd like that to be done, because I'm tired of making individual payments. That
would be nice. I second that.
Yeah, there you go. You've heard it here first. What TV box set are you binging at the moment?
At the moment, my girlfriend and I are watching Ozark together. So we finished Succession, which I loved, and we're kind of mourning that. So we needed to go on to something else meaty to kind of replace it. So I know it's not current necessarily. Well, I think season 4 is out, but we've started Ozark. We're kind of halfway through season 2.
I've just finished watching season 4. It's brilliant. I'm halfway through season 3. Yeah. So. I'm halfway through season 3 of Succession. So
Succession is just...
I'll finish it this weekend.
Yeah, it's great.
What's the best bit of life advice you've ever received?
I've received an awful lot of advice, but I have a recency bias and I have a terrible memory. So I had a call with a guy last week who runs a company that's worth 1.5 billion, and it wasn't necessarily life advice, but it was just advice for founders. Your job is to kind of maintain like constant positivity with the team, with yourself. Because even with that, it's still hard, it's still unlikely to happen. But without it definitely won't happen. Keep looking forward, keep going, and remain positive was what he said to me. I know it sounds simple, it sounds very, very obvious and not that original, but it's been repeating on me since. And I just feel like it's helped in the past, few weeks. Because it's hard, it's a tough environment, but we're doing something that's worthwhile. We're building a product which I think is really useful for the world, and I really love what we do. What's better? It's a privilege to do it. It's a privilege to be working on this problem, and we've chosen this problem to work on, and I think that's a privilege. So yeah, stay positive with it.
Love it. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I would tell my imposter syndrome 22-year-old self at Barclays that you did belong, and that you were good enough. Relax a little bit more. Enjoy the ride a little bit more in those early days. But then, like I said at the beginning, I think it was because of that I ended up being good, but gone a little bit easier on myself probably would have been better for me.
Who in the world of fintech would you most like to take to lunch?
I would like to pick the brains of Nick Storonsky from Revolut, because I think they're one of the companies, especially fintech, that have scaled amazingly international from an international perspective. You don't get it that much, really, but they've done an amazing job. And that and all the other things, I'd like to chat to him. But I could talk to him about a million different topics. But I think he's in terms of speed of execution and delivery, I think they're amongst the best in any industry. And but within fintech, I think he's the person that I'd like to speak to. I see them as like that wave of fintech company was like the wave before us, or the one or two before us. And I think they've blown out the pack. So it would be him, I think.
I say that's a good choice, yeah, and for good reasoning as well. Agree with that. And my last question, my favourite question, is what's one thing I haven't asked that you think I should have asked you?
Nothing about me personally, I don't think. But, and I think we've got everything over us from a business point of view. What would you like to ask me? I'm going to flip it back. What would you like to ask me?
That's harsh. I've never had that happen before. I don't know. I think we have kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
From founder, marketing, the business itself is pretty well rounded. I think we've done it.
We've done it. It feels good. Yeah.
There you go. That answers all the questions. Tom, thank you very, very much for coming on today. Really enjoyed it. Naturally, we'll put obviously all the links to CIRCA5000's website and all the other bits and pieces into the show notes. Thanks for coming on today.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.